Just why is the Trump administration determined to get rid of USAID? Within weeks of taking office, the White House ordered the closure of the agency, which oversees America's vast foreign aid and assistance programs. While the effort is now on hold following a court order, the decision to shutter USAID will have profound and in many cases unexpected effects that could not only undermine international peace and security, but could also have far-reaching implications for the United States. So, just what lies behind Trump's decision to close USAID? And why does it matter far more than many perhaps realise? Hello and welcome. If you're new to the channel, my name is James Ker-Lindsay, and here I take an informed look at international relations, conflict, security and statehood. Aid and development assistance is a feature of modern international relations. Indeed, for many economically advanced countries, it's become a central pillar of their foreign policy. However, while many argue that this spending benefits less developed countries, it's also attracted criticism from both ends of the political spectrum. On the left, many insist it's merely a way for wealthy nations to exert leverage over the less fortunate. Meanwhile, on the political right, many view it as an unnecessary, if not wholly wasteful, expense. The money could be far better spent on other deserving causes closer to home, including tax cuts. This debate has been brought to international attention by the Trump administration's efforts to close USAID, the United States Agency for International Development. Overnight, the entire USAID budget was put on hold, halting efforts to tackle hunger, disease, terrorism, climate change, human rights abuses, and conflict. So, just what led to this decision, and what could be the broader effects? While aid may seem like a relatively recent development, it has in fact been a feature of international relations throughout history. As far back as ancient times, imperial powers, including the Roman Empire, assisted their vassal states and allies with food, infrastructure, and weapons to secure peace and stability on their borders. However, our modern understanding of the term first emerged at the start of the 20th century. The creation of the League of Nations following the First World War also saw the first concerted multilateral efforts to coordinate international relief with programs to help refugees, promote better health, tackle forced labour and promote child welfare. In addition, private philanthropic bodies such as the Rockefeller Foundation also became important sources of development assistance, tackling issues such as education and health. But the key turning point came after the Second World War with the emergence of the European Recovery Programme, better known as the Marshall Plan. Named after General George C. Marshall, the US Secretary of State, this funding, worth $175 billion in today's prices, was central to efforts to rebuild Western Europe. Likewise, the United States also took the lead in rebuilding post-war Japan. From there, aid and assistance became more prevalent as the Cold War developed. As the superpowers fought for ideological control over the world, the United States and the Soviet Union used foreign aid to bolster their hold over Europe, extend their influence in Latin America, and win over the newly independent states across Asia and Africa. It was against this backdrop that on the 3rd of November 1961, President John F. Kennedy established the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. Designed to better coordinate US foreign assistance efforts, the agency initially focused on a range of traditional targets, including strengthening economic development, building infrastructure, improving public health, and developing food security. But as the Cold War slowly drew to a close, its focus began to change. Under the Reagan administration, USAID concentrated on economic modernisation and private sector development. This came to the fore following the fall of the Soviet Union, when it began to increasingly focus on democratization and the economic transition across Eastern Europe and the post-Soviet states. At the same time, it became directly involved in crisis management and post-conflict reconstruction, including in the war-torn Balkans. As a result, in 1998, Congress formally established USAID as an independent body that was separate from the State Department. As the new millennium started, the agency's conflict role continued as it took a lead role in rebuilding Afghanistan and Iraq following the US invasions. Meanwhile, in addition to working in traditional development areas such as improving public health and managing humanitarian disasters, it also became increasingly active in other areas such as tackling gender inequality and climate change. But while many observers recognised the vital work being done by the agency, criticism was growing. Aside from left-wing arguments that aid promoted dependency, many conservative voices on the political right argued that USAID was inefficient, wasteful, ineffective, and had an inherent liberal political bias. In addition, they argued that little of this promoted US national interests. Instead, it was geared towards what they saw as a globalising agenda. As a result, there were growing calls for the agency to be radically reformed or even abolished. However, while steps were taken to cut its budget during the first Trump administration, proposals to fold USAID into the State Department went nowhere. While Republican calls for change continued during the Biden administration, the agency continued to expand its activities. By 2024, USAID was active in over 100 countries and its annual budget stood at over $40 billion. But while this made it the largest single national aid donor in absolute terms, in relative terms, its record was a little less impressive. It amounts to just 0.2% of US gross national income, far short of the 0.7% recommended for advanced economies. I hope you're finding this useful. If so, please do give it a like and perhaps subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks so much, and now back to the video. All this would come to a head on the 20th of January 2025. Just hours after being sworn in for a second term, Donald Trump signed an executive order imposing a 90-day freeze on new foreign aid programs. Designed to ensure spending aligned with his America First foreign policy, the decision took a dramatic turn just days later when the order was extended to halt all existing foreign assistance. Although this was partially reversed soon afterwards to allow the continuation of vital humanitarian aid, such as the disbursement of life-saving medicines, things rapidly escalated from there. At the same time as thousands of overseas contractors and operatives were suddenly ordered to stop work, the agency's senior management was placed on paid leave and denied access to their emails. Meanwhile, as reports emerged that fewer than 300 of its 10,000 staff members would be kept in place, the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, announced that he'd become the agency's acting director. While the initial view was that all this was paving the way for a major reorganisation, it soon became apparent that the plan was to abolish USAID altogether, alleging that the agency was guilty of various wrongdoings, including unsubstantiated claims that it was engaged in money laundering. Elon Musk, the head of the Department of Government Efficiency, announced that USAID would be closed entirely. Since then, there have been growing efforts to challenge the move. Following a lawsuit from two public service employee groups which argued that the decision to close the agency was illegal and unconstitutional, a US federal judge has issued a temporary injunction pausing steps to sack staff. But while many believe that this may have granted the agency a reprieve, others aren't so sure. Leaving aside whether the Trump administration will in fact respect the court injunction, many wonder whether Republican lawmakers in Congress would oppose the president's decision. In this sense, USAID may well be abolished anyway. While many on the political right will undoubtedly welcome the decision to close the agency, the broader implications are profound. To start with, this will have a dire effect on people and communities across the globe. Indeed, calling the decision to close USAID reckless, the head of Caritas, the Catholic Church's aid body and one of the largest development assistance providers in the world, has said that the decision to close the agency could lead to millions of deaths. But in addition to the global humanitarian effects on scores of countries, many analysts and experts have highlighted how the decision to close or radically scale back USAID's activities will also have serious consequences for the United States. For example, medical specialists have pointed out that cutting public health funding could not only make the spread of dangerous diseases even more likely, but it could also make them even more lethal. As noted, stopping clinical trials midway increases the risk of drug resistance. Likewise, closing programs relating to democratization and free speech will also have harmful security effects, strengthening the position of autocratic regimes around the world. Meanwhile, it could also have a profound impact on crime in the United States. Apart from hampering efforts to tackle illegal immigration and various forms of trafficking, it's been pointed out that USAID was funding efforts to tackle cybercrime and online fraud operations in Southeast Asia. This is just a partial list of the areas that have been affected. At the same time, it'll have a massive effect on many US organisations. In addition to the many development bodies and consulting firms that design and implement US aid programs, it'll also affect many US universities carrying out vital medical and development research. It'll also affect construction firms that lead major infrastructure projects. Likewise, US farmers will also be hit. The United States provides thousands of tons of food to USAID every year. Of course, the president's supporters will argue that subsidies can replace this. But as observers note, this will cost just as much, if not more, to US taxpayers, and it won't make up for other losses in other areas, such as the significant unemployment that all this is likely to lead to. Finally, it'll almost certainly have broader geopolitical aspects. Many have pointed out that if the US steps back from development assistance, others will fill the void. In some cases, this could be from other Western partners, such as the European Union, already the world's largest aid provider, as well as Britain, Japan, Norway and Switzerland. However, they've also been cutting back on their development aid recently. Instead, and more worryingly, many suspect that China could instead take up the slack. Ultimately, while many observers would acknowledge that there were indeed problems with USAID and that some cost-cutting and administrative reform was not only possible but desirable, the decision to close the agency entirely was not only illegal but is also highly worrying. Many lives and livelihoods will be lost or otherwise profoundly affected by this decision. More to the point, even if the decision is now reversed and USAID does survive in one form or another, many observers note that the damage has already been done. Many programs won't be able to restart. And the longer the uncertainty continues, the more damage will be done. But while many will no doubt cheer this on, it could well backfire. When looked at more broadly, the political, diplomatic, strategic and economic effects on the United States will reach far wider than many of those who support the decision perhaps realise. I hope you found that useful. If so, here are some more videos that you might find interesting. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video.